permit, I mean, this is going to be a permit, so I would say at least 6 months, if not longer.
And can you estimate what kind of costs might be involved in that kind of a re-subdivision of the lots?
I can't.
Well, can you, is it a small expense, is it a large expense?
I think it would be prohibitive to the development.
So, in other words, it would be not only time-consuming, but also expensive to undertake that process. Is that correct?
Correct.
I don't have any other questions at this time. I'm going to turn to the board and ask if board members have any questions for these witnesses.
Third Chairman, go ahead.
Is there any, going to be any change on the height with these new models? The total height of the places?
I'm not, I don't have the specifics, but it would fall within the guidelines on the plan, where it wouldn't be higher than the ones allowed.
Okay. Another question, with these variances, would that cause any issues if residents down the line would want to put like a deck out back or anything? Would they have to come in here to get approval or anything?
No, everybody would be able to put a deck. It's something we've been looking at extensively, and the majority of the lots could fit 15, 20 or greater deck on the back of the house.
I was running a note. How much deck is possible on these lots with the variance granted?
It just depends on the specific lot and the specific house, but it's something we've been looking at and studying. And for the most part, the majority of the homes could fit a 20-foot deck or greater.
So you wouldn't anticipate the need that any residents on these would ever need to bring a dimension variance to us on anything out back?
I wouldn't expect it, but I can't say definitively no.
Are any of these homes going to have decks on them or no out back? Or?
It would be an option to build a deck, but we don't, it's up to the individual.
What are typical deck dimensions for developments that you handle?
It varies. If you look at the exhibit, it has the houses that are blowing up. And you can see that the panel has an optional covered porch that it's showing, which is probably 10 by 15.
You just pointed to a lot. What lot is that? Can you say?
That's lot 61, lot 60, 62. Anywhere you can see the panel, it shows an optional covered porch on that.
And you said that's what dimension?
I believe it's probably 10 by 15, somewhere in there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. By no stretch of the imagination, I'm not a builder. I'm an equipment operator and a farmer, but you had made a comment that said if we would allow this, that you would be able to put a 9-foot ceiling in. I've built silos that are 16-foot round, 60-foot tall, and it doesn't matter if I move them 10 feet or not. I can still build a silo 16-foot round, 60-foot tall. So what makes you say that you can have a higher ceiling if we would allow this variance? That just makes no sense to me at all.
It was an example of some of the options that we could put in this product line that we're proposing to build that we can't put in the product line that's out there right now. It was just an example of some of the different included features or features that a home buyer could select with this product line that we're hoping to build if the variance is granted.
Okay, so the variance is not necessarily needed to put a 9-foot ceiling in, but
Yeah, the homes that are being built out there that in phase 1, there's not an option for 9-foot ceiling.
so the overall design of the house. That's the only question basically that I have.
Mr. Rogers, would you mind if I ask a follow-up question based on your question?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Just so we understand correctly, it's basically what you're saying in response to Mr. Rogers' question, right? You offer a series of models through NVR, and with the ones that you're able to offer here on the lots as they are, none of those models come with a 9-foot ceiling. You couldn't just change it. You would have to offer a different model to get to a 9-foot ceiling, which would be the models we're talking about here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question. By granting the backyard setback to 25 feet, and you bring your 5 feet in on the sides, I haven't seen any house dimensions, but is your square footage increasing on the house size
For the proposed
for
numbers?
the proposed homes?
Sure, increasing slightly. Right now, what's out there is probably right around 2,000 square feet, maxes out, and these would be, 22, 23, 2,400, depending on the home. So it's not going from small to huge, it's just a slight increase, as you can see with the pictures that we provided, just to help meet the market.
So, Rob, may I ask a follow-up question on that, just so I'm sure?
Absolutely.
Is that, when you say 2,000 to 2,200, are you referring to the overall square footage of the interior of the home, or the footprint, or both?
Just the interior square footage of the home, just generally speaking, to give you an idea that it's not going to look much different from the outside.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one. I think you had mentioned, I just want to double check, that if this were granted, that the homeowners would clearly see that these variances were granted,
Yes,
just so that they don't have to come back to us or anything in the future.
yes, we would convey that, and we would make an amendment, put it in the public offering statement, and it would be provided to every buyer.
Any other questions from the board?
John?
Not right now.
Just a moment, please. All right, I'm going to turn to Ms. Schultz. This is your opportunity to ask questions of the witnesses who have already testified. I would like to separate this from your opportunity to provide sworn testimony. So try to keep in mind that this is a time for questions, but if you wish to provide testimony, we'll give you an opportunity very shortly to do that. Thank you.
And can I also ask the board a question, a serious question?
Sure, but I'm not sure why you'd be asking the board questions other than procedural questions.
Well, I just want clarification. So my understanding that looking at the criteria for allowing a variance to go through and be accepted excludes financial hardship. Is that correct?
I'm going to ask Mr. Nagel to comment on that, and then I will provide my thoughts as well.
Would you like me to do
If
that now?
you would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Please do.
So, a dimensional variance is different from a use variance. And with a dimensional variance, you still have to demonstrate a hardship. But the supporting facts and basis for the hardship under the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision in the Hertzberg case and the cases that followed that decision in the appellate courts in Pennsylvania recognize that a dimensional variance can be based on both the unique physical characteristic of the lot in question in combination with some level of economic hardship. So in this case, we have both circumstances. We have the existing lots that were not created by the applicant, they were created by the developer and sold to the applicant. And is it fair to say, Mr. Pearson, that you didn't design, allow the lots, you just purchased them as they were, correct?
That's correct.
So the applicant had no control over that physical characteristic of these lots. And number two is the economic piece, which goes in combination with that. And as you heard from the witnesses, or you heard from Ms. Hutchinson, it would be cost prohibitive to try to reshape these lots, especially considering all of the improvements are installed, that you would need another variance from a different requirement in order to do that. And add to that, I think it's fair to say we would agree, Mr. Pearson, that it would be cost prohibitive to try to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so the combination of those factors does justify a variance under Pennsylvania law in these circumstances. And it meets all the four requirements for a variance which we reviewed and discussed tonight.
Okay, so I'm going to answer on behalf of the board to Ms. Schultz's question. The board has not yet determined whether the standards have been met for a variance tonight. However, Mr. Nagel is correct that under Pennsylvania law, and just to this extent, I'm not saying that the conclusion is correct because the board makes that decision, but the legal standard that the board has to consider here for a dimensional variance is different than for a use variance. In the case of a dimensional variance, and I would say that this application that is pending tonight, I would classify as a dimensional variance, was a topic that was addressed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in a case called the Hertzberg case, is what the lawyers refer to. And that case did indicate that courts may consider multiple factors, including the economic detriment to the applicant if the variance was denied, the financial hardship created by any work necessary to bring the property into compliance with zoning requirements, and the characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. So there is a legal standard by the highest court of the state that says that with a dimensional variance, economic consequences to the applicant may be considered by the zoning board.
Do you know whether the HOA allows for sheds to be placed to the side of the home? Because it is my understanding that given if the variance is approved, while you would have room for a minimal deck, there would not be enough room for a shed.
Objection to the characterization of a minimal deck. I think that Mr. Pearson testified that the deck is substantial and adequate for all of these lots.
Well, I'm going to sustain your objection to the extent that you should try to avoid changing the testimony of the witnesses. I mean, there was testimony about decks, and that testimony spoke for itself. But I think what you're getting at is there room with the modified setback that's required for a shed to also be placed in the rear yard?
Or a shed, and if there isn't, would the HOA allow for it to be placed at the side of the home?
I don't think the answer to that question.
Mr. Nagel, do you have any information that would be responsive to the question?
I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay. So there is not an answer to your question.
So if there isn't room and a shed would have to be placed on the side of the home, do you believe that that would alter the character of the neighborhood?
Again, I'm going to object because I think that's a hypothetical question that we don't have any basis for knowing whether a shed could be put there.
Well,
Can I ask Mr. Pearson a question about sheds just generally?
yeah, go ahead.
Do you know if sheds are permitted in this community generally?
I don't know specifically what the setback requirements are, what the first, I don't know any details on the sheds, to be able to speak to that.
So, what I would say, and just in general comment, I think you would anticipate this answer, is that the developer and any lot owner who buys a home in that development is going to have to comply with any applicable zoning regulations for the placement of sheds on the property. And it's speculative right now as to, what a property owner might specifically request. So I guess we don't have an answer to your question. Other than that, the variance that's being considered tonight by the board would not in any way provide relief to a lot owner relative to any applicable regulation that would apply to the placement of a shed on the property.
Mr. Solicitor, we have the writing here under 27902,
Okay, what is that?
section C. Do you want to read it or do it for me?
Go ahead, read it.
Okay, section C, number 1 says, no principal building and no other building containing a dwelling unit or habitable living space shall be erected within or shall project into any required yard in any district. The following components of such building, however, may project into any required side or rear yard as long as they are not set back at least 15 feet from any side or rear lot lines, decks, patios, steps, and similar landings, buttresses, chimneys, cornices, piers, and plasters, enclosed fire escapes, and access ramps for physically handicapped persons. Where the lot dimensions, configurations, or topographically allow, no reasonable side, rear, or yard locations. The handicap access ramp may project into the requirement yard provided.
Okay, what section were you referring to?
27-902. 15 feet is what I got
From the lot lines.
from the lot lines, yes. Section C, number 1.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 2003 ordinance, and it's, yeah, it's a different number.
This is the number 2018.
So if it's 15 feet, they won't be able to put it on the side then, right?
Correct.
You'd have to go up back, right? Could be in trouble, could be probably on the rear, right?
But I don't see sheds in this list of things that must be set back, though. I mean, and a shed is not habitable living space. So I'm not sure that that section covers sheds. Yeah. But in any event, I guess, can I ask Mr. Pearson, is it true that you are essentially accepting the risk that there could be shed placement challenges that might be more difficult with the variance that is being requested tonight, and you wish to proceed with your variance request even if there were some consequence with regard to the ease of placing sheds on these lots?
Sure, it's every lot and every house and every situation is specific to that, buyer. We will have a plot plan drawn with the house that they buy, with specific options with everything on there, so that they can clearly see before the home is built, before we can put a shovel on the ground, where things can be placed, what size shed they could be looking at, where the shed potentially goes. So we would be upfront with that before we even start the construction.
So is it fair to say then that every purchaser of a home in this stage 2 or stage 3 would have an opportunity to see the lot layout, the setbacks, and also to check the township regulations with regard to shed placement, so they can understand not only where they could put a shed, but where a neighbor could put a shed?
Absolutely.
Ms. Schultz, do you have any other questions?
What is the average home cost going to be for homes in this phase?
Sales price, or,
Yes.
If you know.
I don't know at this point, we're not selling right now.
But would you speculate, given the cost of homes in the current phase, that most owners coming into this new phase would be expecting to have some kind of storage capabilities on their property?
I'm not object to speculation.
I'm gonna allow the question to see if the witness has an answer or not. Mr. Pearson, do you have any answer to her question about what storage, can you re-ask your question?
Would you anticipate that someone that's going to be coming into a home in this price range would anticipate having some sort of external storage capabilities on their property?
I think every buyer is different, and some people would want a shed, and other people don't. And but we were upfront with it, we would show them what their house looks like on the lot, what the setbacks would be, and what the opportunity would be based on the house they select on the lot they select.
And that would be made clear to all of the homeowners that they would have to seek a variance and pay additional money if, they wanted to have a shed on their property. That would be made clear to the potential buyer.
Yeah, I don't want to over-object, I'm not trying to inhibit your question, but there's no evidence that a variance would be required for a shed. There's a 25 rear yard still with these lots, and so oftentimes you could fit a shed and still meet the regulations of most townships.
What size shed are you talking about, though? I mean, your definition of a reasonable size shed may be very different than an average homeowner.
Yeah, I think with respect to a lot like this, that you can only fit a relatively small shed. You couldn't fit a large shed not because necessarily of the township's regulations on shed size, but just because of the very nature of the lot. They're not huge lots. So I would suggest that no home buyer in this community would have the expectation that they could have a huge shed.
But again, you didn't know the answer to whether the HOA would allow you to put a shed on the side.
I can't think of a situation I've ever seen a shed in the middle of the side yard.
Okay, why don't we move on? Do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. So, unless anyone has any additional questions for the witnesses, wait a minute. Mr. Hannum? Yes, yes.
Just general questions then, or?
Yeah, general question.
I guess if there's only 25 foot off the back of the house and the setback is 15, that would only allow anyone to do a 10-foot deck or ask for a variance. Wouldn't be able to put a pool in, they would have to put the shed closer to the house. So it's just something that everyone needs to think about.
All right.
And I don't see how making the house bigger makes it less expensive. And I don't see how you can't have an architect draw a lot or a house that fits the footprint that's there now, that you can have a 9-foot. You can finish a basement, you can put a 42-inch cabinet in. I don't see how the improvements need to have a different house.
Mr. Pearson, I think you've already been asked to testify about, how the larger or the different dimensions are beneficial to the sales, but for Mr. Hammond's benefit, I think that's what he's getting at is, how does this variance make a better house?
The current product line that's out there, it's as Brian alluded to earlier, it's very specific. It's a simply Ryan product line. It doesn't offer a lot of options or things for prospective buyers to choose from. And that's the problem in this current environment with with monthly payments and affordability where they're at, people want more for what they're paying. And we don't have the ability to do that with the existing line that's out there.
So the new design options do not make the house cheaper. Instead, they give the buyer more house for the price. That's, I mean, is that a fair
Right,
statement?
that allows us to meet the market, as I was saying.
So you, okay. So I think Mr. Hammond may have been interpreting your effort to meet the market that they were going to be less expensive, and that's not the case. If I was correctly understanding.
We don't have pricing out yet, we're not, so.
Mr. Hammond, any other questions? All right, Ms. Schultz, okay, well, sir. Yeah, you're gonna have an opportunity to make public comment, but we had established you would have the right to ask questions at the beginning. Thank you. Ms. Schultz, do you wish to give any sworn testimony?
Yes,
Okay, would you allow yourself to be sworn by the stenographer?
yes,
You swear testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes.
State your name for us again, please.
Valerie Schultz.
Okay, what would you like to tell the board?
Yes, I mean, I think, I'd like the board to consider the fact that, you know, these are already very small lots. They are not exactly affordable for the area. You would think that people are coming into this area spending that kind of money. They want to have the capability of, you know, putting an in-law suite in, or, you know, putting a shed in, or putting a
Objection.
pool.
Relevance. There's no testamentary evidence about any of those things, including the comment about affordability.
I'm gonna allow, or recommend to the board that we allow Ms. Schultz to give us her testimony, but I want to assure you, Mr. Nagle, the board will give it whatever weight is appropriate.
Fair enough, thank you.
Okay.
The relevance is that most of those things would go in the rear of your home. And by, you know, reducing the rear setback, that reduces the flexibility and the capabilities that a homeowner has to have privacy, you know, put any kind of structure in the back of their home. And I think that should be expected, especially in this price point.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the board? Thank you. Because you've given us more testimony, I'm going to ask Mr. Nagle or the board if there are any questions for Ms. Schultz. First, the board, do you have any questions for Ms. Schultz? Mr. Nagle, any questions for Ms. Schultz?
Briefly, Ms. Schultz, do you have any experience in the sales and marketing of new construction, similar to homes that are included in the Chestnut Ridge development?
No, I don't see that that's relevant.
I have no further questions.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to recommend to the board that we close the testimony and the exhibits part of this. We have the testimony from the three witnesses, and we have the exhibits that have been presented by the township and by the applicant, and then move to the public comment portion before the board considers any deliberation on this matter.
Possibly ask Mr. Pearson one more question.
Sure. Go ahead.
So according to my math, and this could be wrong, but you had made mention earlier in your testimony that it would probably be a price point structure of around $3,000 a month mortgage payment. So I come up with the current rates is about a $400,000 home is what you'd be looking to sell, but you said that you didn't really have an idea on sale. Is that somewhere around an appropriate price for these homes, around $400,000?
Yeah, it's probably higher than that on what was, I was basing my information on what was sold and out there. And that's what the market, you know, that's the payment based on that, you know, the sale prices in the low 400s.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. With that, I'm going to turn to the audience, and I'm going to remind everyone that, as I announced at the beginning zoning hearing board follows the Board of Supervisors public comment policy, which is attached to the agenda, which was available at the back of the room when you came in. And you are allowed up to 3 minutes of public comment per person. And I would request that you please try to stay relevant to the topic that's under consideration tonight, which is the application of Brian Holmes. So if we could maybe start on the far left, in the gentleman there, do you have any public comment?
No, I do
Gentleman next to you, do you have any public comment?
Yeah, I actually live in Ryan Homes now.
All right, can you state your name and address for the record?
Sure. It's George Perez, I'm at 117 Stinson. I actually have one of the few ranchers that's in the Ryan Homes now.
Is that in stage 1?
Stage one,
Okay.
stage one. And to the gentleman's comment, I paid $424. So just so that my payment's about $2,000, but my interest rate is 2.65. So you need to figure that in around there. And anything I did, I had to go by all the property line variances. So when I put in a fence, it had to be 6 inches off the property. I have a deck in the back of my house. It's 15 feet. That is the very maximum I was allowed, and I have the full yard. So if you're taking 10 feet away, by mathematical, by my math, you're limiting the decks that they were speaking about before. You're also limiting, when you close in the sides, by what you're allowed also. Because I had to come here to get a variance to have a patio with it. And the patio went from what I wanted to extremely smaller because of the side yards. Now I have a corner property, so it's a little bit different because I had to be further from the street with whatever I did. But when we agreed to buy these homes, they never mentioned at any point that the styles were going to change in 2 years. We have 26 homes up now, and nobody at that point knew that the variance was going to change for us, houses to be bigger, whether it be 5 feet, 10 feet, whatever the footage is. And when we were buying these, I remember specifically the young lady saying to us, all of the houses were going to be the same.
Objection, that's, first of all, it's supposed to be a comment, and it sounds more like testimony, and now we're getting into hearsay.
Mr. Perez,
I remember, okay.
I'm going to allow him, he has 3 minutes, and we're going to let him say what he wants to say within that time period, so please
Okay.
continue.
I understand hearsay. The agreement was the houses would be the same when we sign our contracts. Now you're telling us a year and a half in, 2 years in, the house is going to change. I think that in itself is a little, I don't know the words I'm going to use there without being disrespectful. Changes a little bit what we were agreed, what we knew what we would have in the whole development. I think it takes from the aesthetic value of it also.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. All right, Mr. Hammond, did you have any public comment? Okay. Now, on the other side of the aisle, Ms. Schultz, okay, behind you, yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, that's you.
Okay.
Tell us your name and address, please.
Yeah, Jerome Gerald, GBR, 2297, Horseshoe Pike. Your $400,000 price range is low. If you look right up the road here across from the golf course, they're like $475. And your interest rates, I was told every percent that you go up, you're going to lose $6,000 to people that can afford your house. And by you shrinking the lots and making it tougher on the homeowners, I don't think it's fair to the township or us on what you signed on originally for. And as far as the layout of the house, whenever you talk to your builder, you can go 9 feet on the same plot, the same concrete slab. It doesn't matter, you can have a smaller slab and still high ceilings. So I don't understand your selling point on that. And as far as what you can offer the people that are buying a house, it's kind of like a custom house. You can have anything you want in a house if they're willing to pay for it. So I don't understand what your motive is for that.
Thank you. Anyone else on that side? Yes, ma'am.
Karen Custer, C-U-S-T-E-R, hyphen Force. Like General Custer, C-U-S-T-E-R, hyphen F-O-R-C-E. My question, not even question, a comment, is, you know, we all knew the economy was getting bad and was going to start tanking. Why would you proceed to move on to do these other projects and then come back and say, well, we have to kind of change it? I mean, was it a thing of, well, we can start doing this, then they'll grant it for us? I just don't know why, you know, if you know the economy was going to tank, why would you still keep building? That's all.
Any other public comments on this side? Yes, sir. Let's start with you.
Shane had 410 North Bridgeville. Hadden.
Thank you, and your address?
410 North Burdell, Birdell Road. Yep. And so we've heard a lot of testimony about what the applicant wants. If I could distill it into one kind of summary, it would be that without the variance, they might not make as much profit as they want. They've said that demand is lowered. This is a capitalist country, it works under a capitalist system. When there's less demand at the current price, that means the market price has to go down. I don't believe that simple economics represents a hardship. And remember, your job is not to look out for the profits of NBR. Your job is to look out for what's best for Honeybrook Township and the residents that are here, including the residents who already live in the existing portions, the residents who live next to this development that's going in, and the residents who live, outside the areas considered valid for being a party status. That's all I have to say about this. Thank you very much.
Hey, gentleman in the back, did you want to give a public comment? Any other public comment?
Quick question. Is there a time for a general comment afterwards?
That was public comment. You probably didn't speak for 3 minutes. Is there anything else?
Well, since you asked. So last year, this room was filled to the gills 4 sessions in a row for a hearing regarding a special exemption request. There were people testifying for hours who came back again and again to urge this board not to give this special exemption. All of that effort and community engagement, the largest civic engagement this township has ever seen, resulted in absolutely nothing. By granting that special exemption, you sent a clear message to the township residents that was to shut up, to go home, and that we don't matter. After the decision, also, residents who were granted party status, who were supposed to receive a written notice of what the decision was, never received it. I never received it. I was a part of that discussion. Karen never received it. She was a part of that discussion.
I didn't get one.
You didn't get one? Any neighbor I've talked to who was a part of that decision never received their written notice that they were entitled to. That written notice was important so that they could appeal that decision. So we lost that chance. So I just beg you guys to do better. Do better for this community. The developers that come here, they try to push you around. They'll push us around, they'll push anybody around. They got lots of money. But you guys are in a position to push back. So think about the people who are still going to be here after the developers have their money and leave and we never see them again. Thank you.
So were you here for the hour and a half after that meeting that we explained why we did what we did?
No, and I didn't get the letter explaining it either.
Okay, well, maybe the next time before you open your mouth and don't know what you're talking about, you should have stayed and listened for the hour and a half explaining why we did what we did.
If
We
I
are
had,
bound by legal. You do not seem to understand that. It's not my choice, it's not Jeff's choice, and it's not John's choice. We are bound by law. So we do what we have to do under the accordance of law. So maybe the next time when we have a meeting for an hour and a half, after we give a judgment, you'll come and understand why things are done certain ways, instead of spouting off at the mouth and not know what you're talking about. That's all I have to say. We do what is best for the township. We are appointed officials. We are not even elected. We are appointed by the Board of Supervisors to make proper decisions because we are outstanding members and lifelong citizens of the township. So maybe if you'd like to stay afterwards, I can explain to you what I explained for an hour and a half after the meeting.
the law dictates that I am supposed to receive a written notice of what the decision was.
That's not to do with me, that's to do with the attorney.
If we followed the law to the letter, why didn't I get that?
You need to contact the solicitor.
And if I hadn't been in bed with a fever, I would have been here.
Well, you still need to contact the solicitor about that.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
I was supposed to.
Okay. That's for another day, I think. In any event, the record is now closed, and I would ask the board if they, I don't know if you typically allow any closing arguments. I don't know that we need that, but if, do you request that?
Before the board answers, may I recall Mr. Pearson for one question to address one of the comments that doesn't get one addressed?
In order to make the record complete, I request the board allow that. Are you willing to allow that?
I think it's important to address, and Mr. Pearson, I was going to ask you a question. There was a suggestion that somehow what you're asking the board to grant in terms of a variance here this evening has to do with NVR making more money. It's fair, I think you testified already that you're spending a lot of money to make these changes. Is that true? That's true. And is it as much a possibility that you'll make less money than it is that you'll make more money than it is that you'll make the same amount of money even with these changes? It's true. No further questions.
Thank you. We'll include that in the record. And at this point, do you wish to make any closing? I mean, I think we're well aware of everything that's been heard.
Absolutely, and I don't need to make a lengthy closing statement, but I do want to comment on the economic piece of this, because I think it's important to note that in this case, you're really, under the law, as Mr. Hartman noted, under the Hertzberg decision and its subsequent cases in the appellate courts, you're looking at the economic hardship on the applicant. And in this case, we have that. But according to the testimony and the evidence that you've heard this evening, the economic hardship in this case could extend not only to the applicant, but also to other people in this community. And notwithstanding what somebody else believes in terms of what they bought in the first stage, I think what you heard in the testimony is that the real implication is that it could impact not only the developer and the builder and the township, but could also impact negatively, economically, the other residents in the community if they, in fact, can't continue to sell lots in the community. I think that's an important consideration. It goes a little bit beyond what's discussed in the requirements, but I think it's an important thing to keep in mind for the overall good of the development itself.
Ms. Schultz, did you have any final words you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think we need to also take into consideration the economic impact on the township and the homeowner if this is granted. If there are more variances that have to be requested, there's going to be an impact on the township and the homeowner with this smaller rear setback.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to turn to the board and ask if you wish to deliberate on this matter at this time, and if so, we could recess and have an executive session, and have a discussion. I recommend we go in the office next door, or you can deliberate right now publicly, or you can announce that you need to sleep on it and you want to talk about it at another date and time, which we can announce. So what is the preference of the board?
I have one more question, Chris. Does this community have a homeowners association?
Yes.
Do you know what the requirements are, or what the homeowners association allows or does not allow?
I'm not sure I understand.
In terms of what, Mr. Real?
As far as, the question had been brought up on sheds, pools, and so forth. I know, we were in construction for 24 years, and we worked in many communities that had homeowners associations. And some of those were down to no wash lines, no RVs parked overnight, no sheds. What are the homeowners association requirements on this?
I don't know the specifics of all that, I mean, I can pull the documents a little bit, but I don't have the documents with me, I don't want to speculate.
But is it fair to say there is a declaration that has rules and restrictions and requirements?
Yeah, it's part of it, I just don't know the specifics of this one. I'm not giving any bad information.
Correct. Okay, that's all I have.
All right, what's the board going to do next?
I think we should have a recess and have an executive session.
Okay, so the hearing is recessed for a few minutes. We'll try to get back as quickly as we can. So please hold your seats and we'll be back. Thank you.